In an article by Ars Technics about the impact of Metacritic scores with game sales, the article concludes, quote, "A game with better review scores has a better chance of selling well than one with worse review scores. That's especially true at the extreme ends of the review scale, where games come out as almost guaranteed successes or failures based on the critical consensus," unquote. With that said, we are going to be exploring a person whose IGN review could not only bring negative attention to a game, but also positive attention in an unintentional way. On October 3rd, 2014, Ryan Mcaffrey, executive editor of Previews, would make IGN history with his published review of Alien Isolation, developed by Creative Assembly.
When the genuine scares of being hunted by an unstoppable predator are so diluted by repetition and padding, Isolation's epic length really does work against it. Someday, someone is going to make an incredible Alien video game that checks every box.
This was one of the only lower scoring reviews that the game would receive in Metacritic, but the comments to the review itself started spelling out and questioning Ryan's credibility. Here are 3 arguments that have been made about Ryan's review. Exhibit A, game length. According to several viewers, Ryan highlighted how the game was far too long, even stating that as ridiculous as it is to say that a game being too long is bad, is an interesting take, considering that the game has several difficulty settings that could change how long you end up playing the game, but most of his reasoning behind game too long as a criticism feels contradictory if looking at the previous games he reviewed in the past several years with varying degrees of length. He also made it very clear that this was not an enjoyable type of game that he would typically play.
I don't like this game.
Exhibit B, AI is too hard. Again, Ryan highlights how he played on hard mode for most of his playthrough, but felt the Alien's AI was far too difficult and led to many unfair deaths that would destroy his enjoyment as it felt uncalled for. Unfortunately, eagle-eye viewers noticed and commented that he would constantly have his radar near the alien, with the noise constantly bringing the alien to him, thus creating the argument that Ryan has a skill issue.
Michael, I don't like this game.
Exhibit C, game is repetitive. Another argument made in Ryan's review is how he found the game repetitive, as it was the same thing over and over again, despite the variety of scenarios and additional enemies that would later be thrown into the mix to create that challenge he was looking for. Yet, Ryan also highlights in his review that the working Joes and humans did little to keep him engaged. After the review released, 4 days passed, comments and emails likely piled up, which led to the infamous Alien Isolation review discussion, where Ryan gathers the rest of the IGN team to discuss the review, despite many of them admitting that they have not invested any time in playing the game itself.
Parts, and maybe you leave out the parts that you aren't as proud of. And every game has its highs and lows. So that's why previews are often a lot more positive than the review. Sure. Once you play the whole thing, you're also faced with playing the entire game all the way through. You have to take the bad with the good in that case.
So where are you?
I'm actually very early in there, so I haven't gotten to the alien yet.
Points are all. I'm not advocating that this game should have had checkpoint saves, but I like that you are sort of battling from one save point to the next. But when I genuinely had times where there's actually one time where I was at the save terminal and whoosh, dead. And then I had to back up about 30 minutes.
So one of its biggest sins that we haven't touched on yet, and we gotta go, is that it's sort of too true to Alien in terms of trying to cram in everything, not just the Alien, the companies, the androids, and the class systems, and all this weirdness. I wonder if that's kind of why this ended up so long and so drawn out, and ended up being an exhausting, really frustrating experience for you.
It's a good question, but at the end of the day, it's you're playing what you get, and what you get is about 3 times too long, in my opinion. I'll be curious to see.
The poor sales of Alien Isolation would eventually create the correlation between IGN's review and the game's failure to make the mark. Arguments were made. Reddit threads dedicated to discussing the issues of the review led to an increased animosity that Ryan clearly wasn't a fan of. Despite rumors of a sequel, they were squashed in 2015, with the game becoming a cult classic for many, many gamers, except Ryan, of course. That was until August 16th, 2024, when the newly released Alien movie, Alien Romulus, provided several Easter eggs from Alien Isolation, showing that the game has some fans among the film crew, including director Fade Alvarez. And then the bombshell came. October 7th, 2024, on the 10th anniversary of the release of Alien Isolation, a sequel was confirmed by Creative Assembly. IGN, knowing their infamous mark on the Alien Isolation legacy, would later publish a defense of Alien Isolation, where Matt Purslow would give the biggest endorsement of Alien Isolation, while also attempting to bury the past with Ryan's review. Quote, "A decade ago, our own Ryan Mcaffrey gave Alien Isolation a 5.9 in his review, noting that, amongst other things, its genuine scares were diluted by repetition and padding. He wasn't alone in that reaction, and other major review outlets gave it similar scores for similar reasons." Unquote. We also got this lovely tweet from Ryan after the news broke out.
"Michael, I don't like this game."
With that being said, let's go back to that Ars Technics article and read the last paragraph about Metacritic scores and game review sales. Quote, "That said, for the vast majority of games in the middle, Metacritic is far from the final determinant of sales destiny. A game is still probably better off sales-wise with a Metacritic score of 80 rather than a Metacritic score of 60. But there are so many outliers and so much variability to sales performance in that review range that other factors seem more important to a specific game's eventual success." Unquote. So really, if it weren't for the review, more people would have played the game. But if it weren't for the review, we could also say that the cult following and group organization on the game would not have been possible. So yeah, no matter how you feel something you like is being criticized by someone else, maybe all it took was time and word of mouth to let a company know the impact a product could have. But it's never too late. Also, it's never too late for Ryan to follow his own advice from this tweet.